Mic check, 1 2 check, check. 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 Mic check, 1 2. Mic check, 1 2 check, check. 1 2 check, check. Mic check, 1 2. Mic check, 1 2 check, check. Mic check, 1 2 check, check.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started in just 1 minute. If folks can grab their seats. Okay, we have a few members who are still trying to access the Zoom link. And so we're just going to wait a minute. And when the good clerk of the committee gives me a thumbs up, I know technologically we are all ready to go. Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're here as General Law Committee to have an informational forum with the Department of Consumer Protection, one of the largest agencies in state government, tasked with a series of responsibilities on behalf of Connecticut consumers. It is a great honor for us to have Commissioner Caffarelli, you here with us today, but also joined by so many members of your team, deputy commissioners, director of gaming. You have your whole team is here, and I really do appreciate the seriousness with which you've taken this invitation, because I think it's a wonderful opportunity for committee members and the general public as a whole to understand the breadth and broadness and really the engagement that you have in the daily lives of all of our residents. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my ranking member, Representative Tigliano.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming here. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate our new chair putting this together. I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to really learn what's going on at the DCP, because there are a lot of new members on the committee, and I'm sure they'll be informed. I know some of them aren't here, but they are watching, and we hope they have questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Chigarella, any opening remarks?
Why not? I go third, so they said pretty much what I was going to say, but just want to thank you and taking the time to do this and answering some questions and informing the public of the good work of your department. Thank you.
And with that, Commissioner, we're going to turn this over to you. You have the five of us who are here, six of us who are here today, but there's also a number of members online. We're live on YouTube, live on CTN, and live on Zoom. So questions may come in from a variety of sources as we move on to later parts of the meeting. But with that, we're going to turn it over to you to direct the role as well as you would like to.
You know what? Sorry about that. So I'd like to echo my thanks to the chairman, ranking members, and the entire committee for this invitation. And we are honored to be here and really share the great things that DCP does day in and day out. As you mentioned, we do have a full complement of the leaders of all the divisions sitting to my left and my right and my left, as well as we're joined by the two deputy commissioners, Maureen Magden and Shirley Skyers Thomas, directly to my left. They are the subject matter experts who lead the teams that do this great work every day. And I really hope that you walk away from this having learned something about our agency that you can take back to your constituents, and with a better understanding of the ways we serve the people of Connecticut every day. And we can continue to build upon that with your support. Our mission is to ensure a fair and equitable marketplace for businesses and safe products and services for consumers in the industry we license, regulate, and enforce. Well, what does that really mean? In short, our goal is to keep our communities safe while not overburdening businesses that do the right thing. And the reality is most business owners in the state go above and beyond to run fair and safe operations. Since starting this job nearly 2 years ago, I've often reflected on all the things this agency does. Most people don't realize, but they are comforted by that someone is watching out for most of the things that we do. We intersect with so many aspects of your daily life that you'll hear about today. And yes, I've thought about a world that what a world would look like where an agency like DCP was not necessary, where every person working on a job site had the requisite training, experience, and education. So we didn't have to worry about who's wiring and plumbing our homes and offices and schools, where contractors never took deposits for work they didn't plan to complete or even start, that professionals never dipped into trust accounts or cut corners or misrepresented facts, where all businesses treat consumers fairly and never tack on hidden fees or mislabel prices, a place where drugs are never stolen or adulterated, where food is warehoused properly so there's never an outbreak of foodborne diseases that starts at your local grocery store. And yes, that all food is labeled properly so people with allergens don't have to worry. Where defects don't exist in cars, and if they did, manufacturers readily replace any lemons that were unknowingly sold to consumers. Where bars or package stores didn't sell intoxicating liquor to minors and never overserve their customers. Where illegal, untested cannabis products that look like everyday candy or snacks don't exist. Where predatory gambling operators don't prey on our players to place illegal bets that quite often won't be paid out. Where scams and fraud don't plague the most vulnerable in our population, stealing their hard-earned money. A world where you get what you pay for, one where everyone is honest and plays by the rules. But until that day comes, we're going to continue our work. We are a small but mighty agency of roughly 300 employees across 12 divisions. Many of our employees are out in the field. They conduct investigations, routine inspections, they answer questions that licensees may have. They are out there day in and day out doing the work that keeps us safe. From pharmacies to home improvement to licensed trade at construction sites to liquor establishments to gaming facilities to food warehouses to the pumps where you fill your cars with gas, um, to scam and fraud awareness, our agency does it all. Now, some have called us the junk drawer of state government, but that's because most times when something doesn't squarely fit in another agency, DCP is tasked to do it. But I'd rather you think of us as the Swiss Army knife. We're uniquely qualified to handle the workload that you give us. And you'll hear a little bit about each of our divisions, as well as some of our other programs that might be your first introduction. I think of them as our hidden gems. I've learned a lot along the way as I've served the past 2 years. And we'll answer any questions that you may have. I'd like to start with our licensing division. And unfortunately, our licensing director, Mike Elliott, he's unable to be here, so you'll have to listen to me for a few more minutes. Our licensing division is responsible for creating, implementing, and supporting online applications, renewal, and all related processes for more than the 200 license types. Excuse me. With more than 300,000 active credential holders in our state, our licensing division processes tens of thousands of new applications a year, nearly 200,000 renewals, and transfers roughly $57 million to the general fund. The agency has prioritized streamlining and efficiency, reducing paperwork and wait times, making it easier for people to do things online so they can spend less time waiting for applications to be approved and get to work faster. Since 2007, when licensing had a staff of 23 people, they have assumed responsibility of a variety of additional tasks, including amusement, lottery, OTB, public charities, accountancy, occupational trades, professional licensing, real estate teams, and e-cigarettes. And today, they still have 23 employees. And that's because of efficiencies that we've employed. To highlight some of the many major advancements looking back over that time, since 2008, we've prioritized creating online applications and renewals for most credential types. Again, it makes it easier and faster for applicants and license holders to submit their paperwork and fees without waiting on the mail or traveling to our office. They're able to get their part done faster, and so are we. We've reduced wait times for approvals from weeks to days, and usage of our online services has increased by 60 to 70%. The division has also prioritized the workflow process, providing an index of requirements for each credential so that applicants can easily find a checklist so they know what they need to do to get a particular credential without calling our office, again, saving us time and them time as well. Simple changes like emailing renewal notices rather than printing and mailing them. It allows for more online payments, bulk payments for applicants with multiple credentials, and fast-track renewals have also made the processes easier for Connecticut. Our licensing division also partners with other agencies to streamline processes between agencies for the customers we share. And we're laser focused on serving as efficiently and effectively as possible. They're also paving the way for digital licenses, bringing us into the professional and occupational trade workers into the 21st century. It's going to make them easier to verify their credentials with consumers using the phone in their pocket rather than this flimsy piece of paper that the tradespeople carry around. Most often, they leave them in their truck. It helps business owners stay organized while better protecting consumers and making it easier for them to verify an active credential. A few last highlights: they provide user guides for our online services. They allow third-party access to process renewals, and they've developed an interface between our exam vendors and our licensing system for validation of exam candidates to tighten up that time frame as well. These process improvements may sound boring on their face, but the reality is they have an incredible impact on our ability to serve credential holders and consumers alike. And for that, licensing is the unsung workhorse of our agency, and I'm so grateful to Mike Elliott and his team for all they do. Next, you're going to hear from the various directors regarding the divisions they manage. I want to stress how hardworking and dedicated they are, not just to those who are lucky enough to call Connecticut home, but to every person who passes through our state or engages in our marketplace. They are a wealth of information and have extensive experience in their fields. They're a resource for you whenever needed. I've learned a lot from them working at DCP as a staff attorney and now as commissioner, and I know that you're going to benefit from their knowledge as well. They lead by example and their teams follow suit. I am so proud of the heart and soul of this agency, the workforce. I'd like to turn it over to Jason Cohen, who's going to introduce you to our operations and complaint center.
Thank you, Commissioner. As I said, my name is.
Yeah, okay. I was just going to say, like,
Sure.
as people move from one to another, just introduce yourself with your name and your title, and that'll make it easier for recording purposes and notation purposes as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, my name is Jason Cohen. I'm the Director of Operations. When I started here 9 years ago, there was no operations division. I was appointed as an assistant to the commissioner with the focus on process improvement and efficiency across the agency. However, over those last 9 years, my responsibilities have grown to have a potpourri of programs under the umbrella of operations. I guess if DCP is the Swiss Army of the state, I guess operations is the Swiss Army of the agency here. So that now includes information technology, the complaint center, boards and commissions, continuing education, and most recently, real estate enforcement. We've seen big changes in each of these areas over the years. As you likely know, IT has officially been centralized across the state under DAS BITS. However, luckily, we've been able to essentially retain the IT staff that we hired as direct support to DCP staff. And I work in partnership with their supervisors to establish goals and priorities and work on technology projects. A huge focus for the team includes support of eLicense, which is our enterprise licensing and enforcement system. It's a massive, powerful system, but that means it's also complex and can require some technical expertise for ongoing enhancements and configuration. I sit on the statewide steering committee for the system, and we're planning a review of the system with a public RFP in 2027 to make sure that we're always up to date in how we serve the public and have, current tools for our staff. The Complaint Center is the virtual face of DCP, responding to calls, chats, and emails on virtually any topic, and referring them to the appropriate division when outside of their scope of service. Aside from providing information and answering questions, their primary focus is to help consumers and businesses arrive at a mutually agreeable resolution to their issues. Often we can achieve that simply by getting involved in the conversation. Other times it requires more active mediation. The vast majority of the time we're successful, leading to more than a 65% positive rating in follow-up surveys, even from people who didn't necessarily get what they were hoping for, and nearly $500,000 recovered for consumers last year. The center has gone through a number of changes, focusing on making it easier for consumers to submit complaints and communicate with staff. The center was among the first in the state to offer live chat, now enhanced by a BITS chatbot, and it's been well received by both the staff and the public. DCP works with a number of boards and commissions. These include all the trades, professions, real estate, and accountancy. The boards provide a vital partnership with DCP, serving as experts in their field for us on matters of licensing, enforcement, and legislation. And we also provide administrative support for them, organizing and coordinating all the public meetings and related materials. Our 14 boards used to be supported by a variety of people, typically those who manage that area of licensing. But a few years ago, we created a board coordinator whose role has been able to provide consistent support to the many volunteers who staff the boards. Just earlier this week, she ran a training for board members to help them better understand their roles and how we at DCP can support them. A number of license types require continuing education to ensure they remain up to date in their profession, particularly with regards to changes in the laws. Our unit works with education providers to ensure that courses meet the various guidelines and that licensees complete their CE on time. And for those that don't, we work with legal to take the appropriate enforcement actions, whether issuing fines, settlements, or moving on to formal hearings before the appropriate board. Real estate enforcement has been quite a learning experience this past year, but that's what keeps the job interesting. We regulate brokers and salespeople, as well as appraisers and community association managers. Since last March, we've reduced the backlog of cases in the unit by nearly 50%. We're also in the process of hiring a team member to add to our existing 3. Currently, only one is a licensed appraiser, and we're looking to add support for her with our upcoming biannual audit from the federal agency that authorizes our appraisal program. I'm also planning to have this hire focus on community association managers, as the laws and issues related to them and the homeowner and condo associations that they serve is unique, complicated, and expansive. And we're also reaching out directly to consumers to better prepare them for the home buying and selling process. On Friday, February 7th, we're offering a public seminar on what buyers and sellers should know, both in person and online, and registration is underway with promotion across DCP's social media as well as online advertising. We anticipate a great response. And in the process improvement realm, we're currently working with the Department of Labor on coordinating and streamlining the process for occupational trades licensees as they move from the DOL apprenticeship program into our licensing process. Currently, it's a very manual, analog process where DOL provides them a letter of completion that the apprentice needs to provide to us to prove that they completed it. We also have no idea who or how many have gone through the various apprenticeship programs. However, we've worked with DOL to get them into the same e-license system that we're using. So now it will soon be seamless and automated. Applicants will no longer need to prove their apprenticeship completion, as the system will already know, and we'll be able to automatically invite them to apply and require virtually nothing from them but the application fee before we approve them to sit for the exam. We've also embarked on a data analysis project in conjunction with this to examine the impact of these changes. We've learned that over the last 5 years, nearly 10% of people who completed apprenticeships did not go on to apply for the license, and about 1,000 people, approximately 20%, applied but have not completed the process to receive their license. We're now reaching out to all those people to better understand the barriers they may be experiencing that are keeping them from achieving their goal, especially after investing so much time completing their apprenticeship. Thank you.
Before you move on, Jason, I just want to say, like, this was outstanding because while you're talking, we're having ideas here about different things. And I think that this is,
Right?
that may not be what you were looking for today.
This is
But
one of my fears.
it's certainly helpful for us to kind of get a full, complete picture of everything going on. And we might be reaching out to you to kind of get a sense for some of these operational controls that you have in place and like how to like look at those and make them more efficient on our end for different ideas. That's great. Can you go over, you highlighted in your presentation the number of complaints that you deal with on a yearly basis. I think I saw, yep, there it is. 3,700 cases open, 1,200 online chats. Can you walk, like anecdotally, can you walk me through an example of what happens when someone interfaces with your agency or goes online and just starts typing in that chat box? What would the average Connecticut resident see, feel, hear when they came to you with a business complaint?
Sure. Well, I mean, if they reach out to us, by phone or chat or even email, typically with questions, we try and provide whatever information we can. But when they're ready to do a formal complaint, the only thing we tell them, we do require it in writing, ideally through our website, because make sure we get all the information that we need. But we do take it by, email, fax. We still get even snail mail. And then we enter it into our system. We send them a confirmation that we've got their complaint. We then reach out to the business that the complaint is about, give them an opportunity to respond, and then begin that mediation process. If it's a business that we regulate, we may have to take some, depending on the situation, may be able to or have to take enforcement actions if they violated, a license that we have jurisdiction over. But probably the vast majority of our complaints to the Complaint Center are for non-regulated businesses. So for the most part, unless there is a violation of, say, CUTPA, it really is a mediation, and if we're unsuccessful, they certainly have the opportunity to take them to court. But like I said, the vast majority, we're able to get to some type of positive resolution.
That's great. And so when someone feels like they've been wronged or feels like they've been taken advantage of and they reach out to the state for help and they end up at your front door, they don't need to have already contracted with a lawyer or hired legal counsel. They don't need to like ensure that every word they say to you or put in the bot is like, well thought out, and their complaint is like this absolutely perfect legal document that they're ready to enter into negotiations with. They're reaching out to you and getting advice and consulting with somebody who can help guide them through that process, right? Like it's not just well, you didn't have that form dotted and crossed, so you lose, right?
Exactly. It's a very open process. We'll take as much or as little information as you have. We'll say if you have X, Y, or Z, those would be helpful. But if you don't, we'll work with what we've got, and do our best. The one thing that people do tend to maybe have some confusion about, they expect us to sometimes be their personal lawyer.
Right.
And we said, we're not here representing either party. We're here to make sure that, the businesses are operating fairly. And of course we know that not every situation is necessarily the consumer in the right. So we're really just trying to make sure that everyone comes away with a mutually agreeable resolution when we can.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, or we want to move on.
Yes. I was just, my question was about revenue.
Yeah, go for it.
You want to do it now?
Yeah.
I was just curious, can you break down how much of that revenue, you said what, $51 million turned over to the general fund? How much of that was just applications for businesses as opposed to occupational licenses?
That was my slide, but I would defer that to Mike Elliott, but he didn't come today.
The one guy that didn't.
I'm kidding,
Shockingly
Representative.
enough, the one
We can
person.
get that information for you. I don't have it off the top of my head,
Okay.
but it is the total that they do process and is turned over to the general fund. I can hazard a guess, but that would get me in trouble. So I will get you that exact number. I do want to, just commend Jason and his team for what they do. And the Complaint Center, it really is one of the most front-facing things that DCP has. And although, I mean, it, they clarify a lot of things to people who may be confused about the process. Oftentimes there's a lack of communication between a refund period or how they cancel their health club membership. And although the $490,000 returned to consumers, those are not fines, those are actually dollars that are returned to consumers, might not seem like a huge number in this building. It really means something to someone when they get that money back or find some type of resolution or, meet halfway as a result of our involvement. And we really feel proud about helping someone have a voice in that. So
Terrific.
thank you. Next is Roderick Marriott, the Director of Drug Control.
Good afternoon. My name is Rod Marriott, and I'm the Director of the Drug Control Division. I'm a licensed pharmacist, and I've been working for the state for almost 17 years. I started working in the state as a drug control agent in 2008, and in 2016, I became the Director of Drug Control. Prior to that, I worked as a pharmacist in the state of Connecticut in the community setting. The Drug Control Division is responsible for the legal supply chain of drugs. However, I always like to point out that we don't regulate the price. As director, I've been working diligently with my team to enhance our usage of technology to help us be efficient and provide meaningful information to the public and our registrants. My team of hardworking staff performs licensing, inspections, investigations, and monitors the legal supply chain, and those employees of my team are really what keeps the system running. The division is grouped into sections that include pharmaceuticals, including the Board of Pharmacy, cannabis, including medical marijuana, prescription monitoring program, and more. The division is responsible for roughly 150,000 credential holders. Regulating the cannabis industry is unique for the Drug Control Division, and we don't have what I like to call federal cover. There's no FDA or DEA guidance around these drugs and these substances, so it's a very unique situation for us. In that area, I'd like to highlight some of our recent work performing hundreds of inspections for our new cannabis establishments that are kind of coming online in our state, in our growing industry, working with local police, state police, DEMAS, DRS, and the Attorney General and others on vape shops that are selling illegal cannabis. In the pharmaceutical unit, we've been investigating drug diversion within the legal supply chain, often working with federal partners like DEA, HHS, FDA, and the Department of Justice. And we assist consumers when they're concerned about potential prescription errors, which I can assure you are very rare. Recent legislation that we've worked on with this committee are expanding the role and access of pharmaceutical services within the state. Pharmacists in particular are one of the most accessible parts of the healthcare system and one of our biggest areas that we regulate. Their critical role was expanded in recent years to include more vaccinations, collaborative practice agreements, to expand their ability to positively impact patients in the state. We've also been working to increase access to non-legend or over-the-counter drugs. Those medications are now available in vending machines, which are starting to roll out in our state, and we look forward to supporting that program. In the prescription monitoring program, we continue to provide timely data to help inform public health and assist policymakers with the opioid epidemic. We've also been working on the opioid epidemic with drug take-back days with our local law enforcement and pharmacies. And in 2023, that resulted in the destruction of over 60,000 pounds of unwanted pharmaceuticals in our state, in 116 different boxes that are located in different areas in our state. And we're expecting in 2024 very similar numbers in a month or so. We'll have those tabulated. As a regulator, I'd like to leave you a little bit of an anecdote about kind of regulations and a bit of information that was passed on me from my predecessor. In our lives, we all have towns that have streets with intersections. And oftentimes those intersections have stop signs or traffic lights that impact traffic that is often perceived in a negative way. It's easy to forget that these intersections probably don't have or didn't have a stop sign or stoplight at one point in time. And it was put there to solve a problem. Sometimes regulations are thought of in a very similar manner. I think that really the solution isn't necessarily to take away the stop sign or the stoplight, but make them smarter and more intelligent. Things like sensors or cameras that identify when traffic is coming and evaluating those intersections. And I like to think of that as I think of the ways we impact our regulations and our registrants in our state. I've had the pleasure of working with this committee for the last 8 years, and I'm really looking forward to working with you all again this year.
Thank you very much. And I think, your name is the one most often mentioned in some of our screening meetings. Well, we need to talk to Rod about this, right? Like you've adopted one name relevance inside of the general law committee because gotta talk to Rod. Gotta go talk to Rod. Like the entire committee structure, every lobbyist that comes before us. So look, the reality of what your job is on a day-to-day basis is perfectly encapsulated by the analogy that you gave, right? Like the regulations are in place for very specific reasons, borne out by science, borne out by research, borne out by protections that our constituents need. So we do appreciate the role you play here in Connecticut on behalf of all of our residents, behalf on the ideas that we come up with in the legislature, even the ones that you may not necessarily have agreed with in the first place. You're a responsible party for all of Connecticut residents, and we do appreciate your service.
I appreciate those kind words. I'm a little concerned about how much you're saying my name.
All right. Next will be Frank Green, who is in charge of foods and weights and measures standards.
Hi. I'm Frank Green and I manage the food standard, which is weights and measures, as Commissioner said, and product safety division at DCP. I'm here to, can you hear me?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know, it's kind of like dagger at me or something, like a little bit of whatever.
Just scoot up a little, Frank.
Yeah, I know, screwed up a little bit.
There you go.
That's my wife tells me that too. We do a lot of work with labeling, which can be perceived to be boring, but it can be literally life and death. This is one aspect of food safety is labeling. Recently, we were involved with a large-scale recall related to misbranded cookies. This case emphasized the importance of allergen disclosure on public health. As part of our ongoing efforts to outreach to local health and to industry, we were doing some outreach activities related to allergens. We did one in October to local health departments. And then in this spring, we're going to plan to do one targeted business. There's some new allergen guidelines that came out in January. And then I also want to mention, aside from the information on the slides, the states such as Connecticut perform 50% of the food processing inspections reported by FDA and 90% of the produce inspections. These inspections that are most cost effective for the taxpayer. Just to demonstrate this, recently Senator Blumenthal, in concert with Senators Durbin and Booker, called out the FDA on recent proposed cuts in food safety inspections. And then just kind of give you a little context. CDC estimates that roughly 1 in 6 Americans, or 48 million people, get sick each year from foodborne illness related issues. 128,000 are hospitalized, and 3,000 die of food-related causes. With our state and federal partners in agriculture and public health, we seek to ensure that food produced and sold in Connecticut is safe for those consumers. The second program I manage is standards, which is weights and measures. It's probably one of the oldest programs in state government. I have equipment. We no longer use it, just to let you know, that dates to the 1840s. Some of the earliest requirements in state law pertain to weights and measures, such as the Connecticut adoption of disease of bread and ale. I looked this up a couple years ago. The law that originated in 13th century England that regulated the price, weight, and quality of bread and beer manufactured and sold in towns, villages, and hamlets. As it was then, is now, weights and measures is a program to ensure that consumers get what they pay for, whether it's food, fuel, or other goods. As an example of our continued relevancy, we're gearing up most recently to ensure that EV charging stations are dispensing energy to consumers honestly and accurately. We are small in weights and measures, consisting of 8 state inspectors plus 7 municipal inspectors, which we oversee. But we punch above our weight in terms of value to consumers, ensuring that prices are accurate in the grocery store. Fuel, whether it's for motor fuel or home heating, is accurately priced, of sufficient quality, and dispensed according to good measurement practice and requirements. And then finally, but not least, we have a product safety component to my division. Last year, we completed 270 inspections of children's products and articles, basically toys. I think that's what we're most known for. And when we had one recent recall, the Little Tykes lacing shapes that had a choking recall that we publicized in December. And then the safety of children is something we do not take for granted. I'm sorry for rushing a little bit. Thank you very much for your time.
That's quite all right. You have a question?
I do actually have.
Yeah, Representative Tigliano?
If you don't mind.
Yeah.
Right. Why does DCP do bakeries and the rest of the food service industry is inspected by the Department of Health?
We do bakeries. It's something that I guess has just been there forever, which is probably not a good answer. But it's something we try to work with public health, ensuring that we're not doing duplicative inspections. We did have a memorandum of agreement with public health that they would do that we would accept their inspections for those types of establishments. But still, we do some on our own, and then we do large scale bakeries. Our focus is on manufacturing, warehousing, and for those types of things, and plus packaged food. We do have a focus on packaged food.
Is that memorandum of understanding, is that a recent thing?
No, it was like last 2, 3 years ago. I don't know.
2, 3
It's-
years?
Yeah, it's
Because I was curious, I was always curious to know what defined a bakery, right? Because it used to be
it used to be very broad. It
Very
says
broad.
basically if you
anybody who had flour.
flour in
Yeah.
in the
Is that still the case?
still the case, yes.
So your DCP goes in and inspects pizza parlors, basically.
We try not to. If it's a new application form, we try to do that. But what we do is, like I said, we signed a memorandum of agreement with local health so that we can accept their inspection results in lieu of doing it ourselves. So we're not overly burdening the business with excessive inspections.
Was that through legislation or regulation that you do? Not I understand the commercial bakeries, that where you do sort of the front line, which may not even be considered a bakery, right? Because sometimes I feel like it's a duplicate license. So if you have a food service establishment that happens to make a pizza, you would have to have 2 licenses, right? You have to have a bakery license and a,
Correct.
right? That's still the case?
Yeah, a lot of local health departments actually bird dog because we don't really go shaking the trees for it, but a lot of local health departments like that extra layer of inspection or regulatory. So they're the ones that actually kind of push it a little bit.
And is there do you have a standardized, and so for the cottage food, do you actually go into people's homes? Or is there some sort of, what triggers an inspection, or is it just the
For
product
cottage
itself?
food, it would be, the way it's written, I believe it's like if there's a complaint or if there is an ongoing issue. What we try to do is we try to evaluate the product for a cottage food so it's a low-risk product.
With its pH level and its ingredients and all that stuff?
pH and then it's not using potentially hazardous food, which is an old term, but people understand it better than time and temperature control. for
Yeah, the
food.
new one is, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very confusing. The, but basically, anything that's got dairy or meat or fish or something like that, we try to steer people away from, or if they want to can an item, there's always a risk for botulism, for those types of foods.
So do they actually have to submit the product
They
to
have
you,
to
or
submit
do
what
they
their
submit a
proposed
report?
product is. They have to, yeah, they have to submit what the proposed product is. They have to submit a copy of their label so we can evaluate their label for compliance with labeling regulations. One of the reasons I pointed out the allergen labeling is because people don't think about labeling in that way, but you can have some serious adverse results coming from labeling. It's not done correctly.
And you're referring to cottage foods and labeling?
They have to, they're a food product or a packaged food product, like any food packaged product, they have to comply with the components that are needed on a label. That's a common and usual name. It's the net quantity statement. It's the ingredient statement in predominance from largest to smallest. And then the declaration of responsibility, manufactured by, produced by. And then for cottage food, there's an additional labeling, not produced in a government inspected kitchen, that they have to put on their labeling.
Interesting. Of course, I find the topic interesting, go on for an hour, but thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, Frank does have a very interesting division. I'd like to add one little anecdote to that as well. Frank was telling me about, he had some inspectors out at the airport, and I said, "What are you doing at the airport, Frank?" And they actually inspect the fuel trucks that pump the fuel into planes. So we went out, we saw this, and I said to the inspector, "Isn't this great? We're making sure that you're keeping the cost of airline tickets down by making sure the planes are getting all the fuel that they're paying for." And she said, "No, it's quite the opposite. We're making sure that because they pump at such high rates, that if it's not calibrated correctly, the plane could get too much fuel and then the pilot wouldn't know that they were carrying all that extra weight when they were doing the calculation. So it's actually a much more serious issue with inspecting the fuel at the airports. And there's just a ton of things that go on like that. Like I said before, I think to you, Chairman, that, you know, you're happy that it's being done. You don't realize it's us. And so, but we're out there, you know, keeping an eye on it. And Frank and his team do a wonderful job doing that. So thank you.
Thank you. I had just one quick question. Like, well, you know, traditionally it's product recalls where you get the most sort of like constituents and just like Connecticut residents are become immediately alarmed. They hear you issue a product recall and suddenly it's all the media partners are advertising about it. And what is the traditional process by which you issue a recall? How do you inform people? Is it all media driven? Do you try to avail yourself of social media? Like, how do you go about ensuring that the Connecticut populace is aware of the dangers of a specific product?
Well, yes to all the above. You know, the recalls, there's different types of recalls. They're all kind of the same, but they're all a little bit different. For example, CPSC has a little different requirements than uh, FDA, and USDA has slightly different requirements from what FDA recalls. But basically, the thing for a recall is that there's an issue or problem discovered. Someone gets ill, someone goes to the hospital. Usually, there's pulse field gel for electrophoresis where they match up the DNA samples, and those are all published in a database that the labs can look at. Somebody picks it up, so the EPI's kind of done that way a little bit. If a product is, say, so that's one way of doing it. And then if a product is an allergen, it's not listed on the label, and that becomes apparent, usually through someone having anaphylactic shock or a reaction to that. So there's an incident. Basically, there's an incident. Once the incident is determined to be related to a particular product, we usually contact the company or in concert with FDA. Since we're a small state, you know, usually if we bird dog something, we talk to FDA and we work through their recall coordinators. And there's a recall coordinator in New York and a recall coordinator up in Boston. We talk with both of them on a regular basis. And then we try to work it that way. If it's, for example, a retail only product, which happens, we'll do the entire recall. We'll talk to the company. Basically, we'll agree on what their way forward is going to be. Are they going to issue a voluntary recall? And that's kind of a misnomer in that it just gives an opportunity for the company to do the recall, to do the right thing. And then if they choose not to, then we can go in and force a recall on them. So most of the time, the companies are cognizant of their reputation. A recall destroys their market for about 8 weeks. So they know that they're going to lose money for 8 weeks on a minimum. And then it's also the terrible thing that happens when you poison someone or someone is passed. That, you know, I mean, I've stared into people's eyes, red rimmed, that haven't slept for days. I can tell you, you know, if you want to go through a recall, it's not a good thing. So anyways, after that, the company is responsible for the recall. We'll work closely with the company, but they need to contact all their sub-distributees and then make sure that the sub-distributees, if I can get that word out, are aware of the recall, aware of what they need to do as a result of recall, segregate the product or destroy the product. Sometimes the manufacturer wants all that product going back to a central warehouse or central location for disposal. They can also do some relabeling if they choose to. Most don't. What we do on occasion after that, at that point in time, is we'll do effectiveness checks. So we'll take a random sampling of all the sub-distributees and go out there and make sure that they received notice, that the notice was proper and appropriate for what to do with the product, to segregate it, to put it away someplace or destroy it. And then at that point in time, usually there's a press release in there in the mix. I kind of missed that step along the way. But, and then, oh yeah, you know, I mean, Connecticut, because a lot of the distribution comes out of Connecticut, you know, major warehouses such as CNS have multiple warehouses in different states in Massachusetts that come into Connecticut. What some people don't realize is that if a recall impacts like 10 states, It's considered a national recall, but you don't necessarily have distribution here in Connecticut. So you might have a product that that's causing issues, say in the South or in California, and then it's a national recall and it's a common product. I think Costco had some eggs. Maybe I should mention that, but
Well, I think we'll,
What?
we'll kind of, so yes, we do use every avenue to communicate recalls, whether it be communication directly with licensees through email, through the press, the media, social media. In some instances where it's imminent, Frank and his team will go out there and embargo product, make sure it's being taken off the shelves if it's limited to certain stores. They do have a process in place. And just to brag a little bit on Frank and his division more, they do coordinate for the state a rapid response team, and they have tabletop exercises every month. And we are the coordinating agency among many of our sister state agencies to make sure that when something like this happens, they go directly into action. I've seen it firsthand now, and it is amazing the speed with which they move, our counterparts in state government move, and the feds too. So when there's really an issue, all gloves are off and they get down to it. So it's phenomenal. Oh, Frank has one more thing to add. I don't think.
it's a complex process. And then on the federal level, basically they have a recall committee, and then they'll evaluate whether or not the recall is effective on that. I mean, we do that a little bit too, whether it's an effective recall or not effective recall. Like about 10 years ago, there was a big peanut recall, and they deemed that ineffective because they were finding the product in stores months and months afterwards for that particular recall. And then we do embargo and we do witness destruction. It seems like that's a big part of what we do sometimes. It's like if there's a product that has to go to the dump, we witness the destruction. We also do that for traffic accidents. I think that's another program that we're kind of known for, the food traffic accidents.
Yep.
Thank
All
you.
right, well, we've got many others to get to, but Frank, he does have a very interesting division. So next is Chris Gilman, who runs our gaming division.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Chris Gilman, the gaming director at the Department of Consumer Protection. Next month will mark my 8th year with the agency. The gaming division ensures the integrity of all forms of legal gambling in our state. Gaming staff are responsible for the regulation and enforcement of all gaming in Connecticut, including the Connecticut Lottery, off-track betting, sports wagering, fantasy sports contests, iGaming, as well as ensuring compliance with the state's compacts and agreements with the Mashantucket and Mohegan tribes that operate Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun. The 61 employees currently assigned to the gaming division perform many diverse functions, including licensing analysts, field regulation staff, regulatory and criminal investigators, and financial auditors. The gaming division's licensing unit currently manages more than 12,000 active credentials, including casino employees, their management, and gaming vendors, as well as online and sports wagering operators, service providers, occupational employees, key employees, and live game employees, all of which require thorough review upon initial submission and annual or biannual renewal, depending on the type of credential. Not included in this number are the thousands of lottery and OTB licenses also managed by our licensing division. Our field staff regularly inspect every single facility and business in our state that holds a gaming license of any type, including off-track betting parlors, sports wagering retailers. There's more than 3,000 or just about 3,000 lottery retailers in our state, and our live casino gaming studio. We have field staff embedded at both tribal casinos 7 days a week. Our lottery unit reviews and approves all games and prize structures, and monitor and record every single lottery drawing, which are held in one of 2 studios, which are also controlled by our staff. In addition to the resolution of more than 200 gaming-related consumer complaints investigated by our staff, which resulted in payments and refunds to consumers totaling several $100,000, gaming division investigators closed out more than 90 other investigations that resulted in the collection of nearly $250,000 in settlements and fines last fiscal year. Our criminal investigators are post-certified police officers authorized to investigate or make arrests for any offense arising from the operation of off-track betting, retail sports wagering, online sports wagering and casino games, or the conduct of any lottery game. The Gaming Division Investigative Unit is a post-Tier 1 accredited law enforcement agency. The Gaming Division's auditing staff reconciles the calculation of all gross gaming revenue generated in Connecticut, resulting in contributions totaling more than $730 million from the gaming industry to the general fund last fiscal year. The DCP also maintains and enforces Connecticut's voluntary self-exclusion list, a tool for those who may have identified a propensity for problem gambling, which, when enrolled, will prevent that consumers' participation in sports wagering, iGaming, fantasy contests, and iLottery offerings. Our current and ongoing initiatives right now include efforts to force illegal and unlicensed online gaming operators that target Connecticut consumers out of our state and educating our consumers about the benefits of using legal and licensed operators. We've instituted a zero tolerance policy for advertising and marketing use of misleading terms such as free and risk-free. And just this month, we've updated our technical standards to prohibit the use of the word free in any iCasino gameplay where features such as free spins, they can't be obtained without payment in the first place. We're also currently working with all of our operators to improve the ease with which customers can take problem gaming steps, such as setting limits, time limits, money limits, and getting themselves placed on the self-exclusion list. And I look forward to seeing you all next Monday.
I was just going to say, there's probably 100 questions we all have for you, but we're probably going to reserve them all for Monday for you. But you'll see a number of proposed bill requests come in this year and every year, looking to moderate or expand the state's gaming licensees or offerings. And we will look forward to working with you and talking to you quite a bit with the commissioner's guidance about how to appropriately manage all those expectations of my colleagues, so that we're not in violation of the compact, but also we're being responsible operators of the statewide system as well. Thank you again, and we'll see you on Monday.
Thank you. See you next week.
Representative Particular.
The problem gaming fund, does DCP have any control over it whatsoever?
No, we do not.
How they award the money, is that all internal on their end? And then the people who receive the money, does DCP have any oversight of how they're spending it or look into how they're controlling it?
All the contributions I'm aware of to the problem gaming fund are statutory in nature.
So no DCP?
No.
Okay, thank
All right. And I do appreciate the committee's indulgence. I know we were going to try and keep this to about half presentation, half questions. And we did, I promise you, we did a couple run throughs and we had the timing.
We violated that immediately. We immediately, I mean, Jason started going and then, yeah, like it was rough.
All right. Well,
we
thank
got
you.
through you fine.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Poor Frank, but you're good, Frank. Don't worry. So next we're going to go to Pam Brown, who runs the investigations division.
Good afternoon. My name is Pamela Brown. I'm the Director of Investigations. I've had the privilege of working at DCP for 25 years. Our investigation division has an oversight to protect the public from unfair or deceptive business practices, including frauds and scams, alleged violations of Connecticut Unfair Trade Practices Act, and the division has a broad spectrum of oversight, including home improvement, charities, homemaker companion agencies, health clubs, occupational enforcement, and more. To highlight a few of our accomplishments, we have 5 distinctive units: our home improvement unit and new home construction unit. Over the last year, this unit has investigated over 1,250 complaints, to include deposits taken by contractors who fail to perform contracted work, unregistered contractors who fail to register or carry insurance as required, the seasonal storm chasers who are scaring people into getting new roofs, our transient scammers who are offering driveway paving and chimney cleaning using fear tactics, solar companies who are trying to combat the issues rising out of their contracts. Many involve criminal violations of the Home Improvement Act, for which investigation staff applied for 114 affidavits of arrest. The silver lining in all of this is that we have our Home Improvement Guarantee Fund, which pays restitution to consumers who were harmed, provided the contractor was registered. In this area, our future enforcement initiative would be our Sting House, where, based on advertisements, the unregistered contractor gives bids to investigators who are posing as homeowners. The Home Improvement Unit is staffed by former law enforcement and federal agents. Moving over to our Occupational Enforcement Unit, this unit has investigated over 584 complaints in 2024. The staff are credential holders who themselves have worked in the trades as plumbers, electricians, fire protection, HVAC, and 4 are licensed building officials for code enforcement. This unit is responsible for licensing and compliance of construction trades. Some of the highlights for this year: we've conducted 7 joint inspections with DOL, workforce and standards, and wage. These metropolitan inspections included towns of New Haven, Stamford, Danbury, and Rocky Hill. Independently, DCP has conducted 62 occupational license compliance inspections across the state. We've processed 11 affidavit of arrest warrants for unlicensed occupational work. We've issued 150 assurances of voluntary compliance where respondents agreed to comply with the statutes and regulations governing their occupation, and they also paid forfeitures. Moving on to our Consumer Frauds Unit. This unit investigates complaints involving unfair business practices in industries that we do not regulate. These would include fraudulent business practices, misleading advertisements in some of the areas such as general scams, dating companies, to name a few. I'd like to highlight some of our accomplishments through our proactive investigations. So 237 martial arts clubs were identified as being unlicensed and not having the AED as required, and trained staff on premises for life-saving measures. 120 charity donation bins were identified for various violations, to include collecting goods for sale instead of transferring the donated items to those who were in need. Moreover, many of these bins were dropped at strip malls, gas stations, state-owned property without the required permission from the owner, therefore burdening the business owner to pay for its removal and disposal. And you may have seen our press release issued this morning on charity bins, donation bins, and the violations that we have found. Moving on to homemaker companion agencies, we've audited 68 throughout the year and conducted 197 mobile home parks inspections across the state. Thank you for this time, allowing me to speak about the great work my division is doing.
Thank you. I mean, your division clearly is really out there on behalf of Connecticut residents, and I greatly appreciate the effort and your ability to synopsize everything that you do. I mean, this is a lot of work, and it represents, like, I think generally what Connecticut residents think of when they think of consumer protection. So I think you're probably at the front of mind for most people. The work that you're doing is probably the front of mind when most people think of their relationship to consumer protection. So I thank you. Thank you for that. That was great.
Thank you, Pam. And next we'll go to Caitlin Anderson, the Director of Liquor Control.
Good afternoon. My name is Caitlin Anderson, and I've been with the department for 10 years and have been director since 2021. The Liquor Control Division issues all permits relating to the sale of alcohol and manages all administrative violations of the alcohol beverage laws. To understand Connecticut's beverage laws, you must first recognize that we have a 3-tier system of alcohol distribution. A manufacturer sells to a wholesaler, who in turn sells to the retailer. This creates the framework for Connecticut's laws and how our division operates. We use this structure to ensure safe, uncompromised product reaches consumers. We use it to create a smooth and balanced playing field for our industry, and we ensure that adults can consume alcohol safely and responsibly in their communities. Our division is organized into 2 units: licensing and enforcement. The license is crucial as it drives everything we do and determines how the business operates in your community. It's critical that we get the permit right. We have 5 office staff and 7 field agents who work in our licensing side. Last year alone, they issued nearly 950 new permits in Connecticut and processed hundreds and hundreds of permit adjustments. We're very proud of the fact that in 2024, we launched online applications for the first time and introduced new web-based licensing tools. In this process, we eliminated documents, added convenience for businesses and consumers, reduced error, and increased our data capturing capabilities. Our enforcement unit is charged with ensuring marketplace equity and safety. This unit consists of 10 field agents who opened just under 1,000 cases last year alone. Our most common violation remains sale to minor or intoxicated persons. Last year, however, we increased our minor compliance checks by 178%, thanks to a collaboration with the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. Unfortunately, nearly a third of those compliance checks resulted in failure. And for those who don't know, that's when we send a minor into a premise and test whether or not they can make a sale. Last year, the division, for the first time in 15 years, received nearly $200,000 in grants to conduct enforcement operations. And for the first time, we are testing the delivery of alcohol using third-party apps to minors. Both the licensing and enforcement units spend countless hours on community engagement. They assist local police with incidents of violence at permitted premises. They talk with communities about remonstrance procedures to challenge either the issuance or the renewal of a permit. And they work with businesses who've alleged unfair competition. I should also mention that the Liquor Control Division houses the Liquor Control Commission. That is an independent body whose members are appointed by the governor, and they are the board to which we present our administrative violations. Looking ahead to 2025, our goals are twofold: increase education and increase licensing resources. We're hoping to launch an education class for our permittees that will describe the responsibilities inherent with their permit and also teach some of the best practices for avoiding sales to intoxicated persons and minors. This endeavor is in conjunction with DEMAS and DOT, as we all share the common goal of reducing sales to minors and reducing drunk driving. We also hope to increase our general inspection presence to help educate those who need assistance and also recognize that most of our permittees do a great job remaining in compliance. We additionally hope to launch additional licensing resources for both businesses and communities. We're working on making our website cleaner, leaner, and adding additional helpful content. We'll also continue our process of moving applications online and streamlining the information required. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about our division.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your presentation. Your division oftentimes is the one we find in New Haven, helping to, Representative Pillow and I have had experience relying on your division to come into New Haven to help us deal with some problem locations. And we do greatly appreciate your continued availability and helping us ensure that our constituents are being taken care of and there isn't illegal activity taking place. So we do thank you. It's a small group, small division of investigators and inspectors out there, but they're doing an outstanding job keeping our residents safe. Thank you.
I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to echo that quickly. We had a meeting the other day on a constituent issue, and I've been in the liquor business for a long time. I was shocked at the level of activity and organization and knowledge that your department have. I was super impressed with all the stuff you had going on. Was pretty impressive. So
Thank you, Representative.
congratulations.
Thank you, Representative. There is a kind of a last minute addition, if you'll indulge me. We were going to touch on our communications and education outreach, and the directors are here, Caitlin Kraslett and Catherine Blinder, and so they're going to speak to you briefly.
Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Caitlin Kraselt. I'm the Director of Communications for DCP. Some of you probably remember me from my time as a reporter in this building, so it's good to see you again. I'll be brief because you've heard about all of the amazing work that DCP does, and my job is essentially to get the word out about all of this great work. They keep me very busy, and they all do amazing things. It's awesome to have so many great stories to tell at DCP. One thing that I did want to highlight is, which you may have seen, is the recent launch of our consumer protection newsletter. We distribute that through you all, so thank you to those of you that have shared that with your constituents. The idea behind this is to get some of the more useful information about preventing scams and fraud and protecting yourself directly into the hands of consumers. This is stuff that may not be covered in mainstream media, but is really useful. And so we appreciate you sharing that with your constituents. We also translate that into 5 languages and distribute it to a lot of community organizations, local governments, et cetera. So we appreciate your efforts in helping us amplify that and getting that information out. We also share a lot of information on our social media, and we're always working to tell the many amazing stories of DCP. So I'm going to pass it over to Catherine.
Hi, how are you? Thank you. I'm Catherine Blinder. I'm the Director of Education and Outreach. Caitlin makes sure that the press, through the press, the state knows what we're doing, and I make sure through smaller groups of human beings that people know what we're doing. And I think it was you, Representative Lamar, that said that we touch everybody. When I speak, I tell people that, and they challenge me, and I always win because we really do touch some part of everybody's life. You have, again, heard from our directors about the breadth of our work, but it doesn't serve anyone to be the world's best kept secret. So Caitlin and I work very hard to make sure that people know the work that we're doing. I have worked there for 11 years, and only 2 years ago, I discovered that we oversee well drillers. We are, what we do is astonishing. So to do that, we actually collaborate with our sister agencies, and you've heard from other division directors how they collaborate. A couple of years ago, Governor Lamont asked state agencies to please collaborate more and not silo. We took that very seriously. I also represent DCP on several national consumer rights organizations, speak to thousands of people every year through trainings, public events, presentations, faith-based organizations, nonprofits, institutions of higher living, volunteer and civic organizations. We've recently reached out more to the business community through a collaboration with CBIA and Chambers of Commerce. We've also highlighted each of our division directors on an individual webinar with CCM, Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. We learn as we teach. I spoke to a large church in Bloomfield last year, and when I was leaving, a woman came up to me and told me that her daughter went to the local Stop and Shop, and when she checked out, she had no money on her EBT card. It was the first I had heard of it. I came back, told the commissioner and Caitlin. It's a nationwide scam where people are gathering the passwords and information from EBT cards, taking all of the money out. And they do it through skimmers that they put on the existing skimmers at grocery stores. The bad guys are a step ahead of us often. Understanding how diverse our state is and wanting to reach everybody, we place a great importance on reaching the hard to reach. Those who speak another language, those who are, those with disabilities, those who are marginalized by a lack of access to technology, the homebound elderly, or young people not reached by legacy media. 27% of our residents speak another language, and they make up 20% of our workforce, including 26% of the construction trade. In order to reach them, we have the capacity now to translate in real time in almost any language. We translate text, and we translate our publications such as the Lemon Law, the Home Improvement Contractor Guideline, the Women in the Trades, and Cottage Foods. I also write a consumer column for 3 ethnic newspapers, which is translated into Portuguese, Spanish, and Polish, which are the 3 top languages spoken in the state. We also have, every year we do an annual symposium. This year's theme was AI and public policy, which I determined a year ago and had no idea what I was getting into. Senator Maroney was extremely helpful. And Senator Maroney and Senator Duff both moderated a panel at the symposium. And the last thing is that we have expanded our internship program. In the last year, we've had 18 internships. We are now working with CBIA on some paid internships that they pay for, and also through UConn. I consider them our replacement parts. And our goal is to take the student who has never been interested in state government and make them interested in state government. And a large percentage of my interns have gone into state government, and several have gone into the FBI, which I think is Pam's influence. But we do a lot, and we try to tell the state that we do a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you very much for that indulgence. I mean, we do have an awesome story to tell, and Kate and Catherine really get that out there, and we can do more, and we're always trying to build upon that and let people know that we are there for them if they need us. A couple of last minute things I'd like to touch on. I'll be very quickly. We do oversee CUPPA, as had been mentioned before. It doesn't neatly fit into one particular agency, division rather. But we've had Connecticut adopted it in 1973, and we do have jurisdiction over it. And most often it's used as a private right of action, but we do have a CUPPA division where we investigate and prosecute unfair or deceptive acts. We have a great relationship with the Attorney General's office, and we oftentimes do that in concert with them. The other thing that Pam had mentioned is we do have guarantee funds that really just want to thank you for the support on that too. It means a lot to people who have been harmed, and if they get a judgment administratively or otherwise, they can recover money from us, so they're not out, and so they can fix that hole that's left by a contractor in their front window or whatnot, and we'll go after that contractor to recoup that money. And we've just had major success with that, increased payouts over $500,000 from 23 to 24. And we've streamlined that intake and case processing through the use of technology so we can get people their money faster once they get that judgment so that they're not out that money. And I think we have had some discussions about that with the chair and ranking members. And I think that that's really what I wanted to cover. I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce, not to speak, but just a couple other members of the team that do play an integral role. Julianne Avalone is our general counsel, and she is everyone's lawyer here. So she really kind of runs the legal department that helps us get all the stuff done. And you all know both CJ Strand and Sarah Lemaster, who represent us here in the building day in and day out through the legislative session. And Sonia Mathis is with us, and she runs our business office. So she makes sure that she accounts for every penny, and we are very judicious with that. So thank you for that. And you'll see her during the appropriations and money committees. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think this was an extraordinary overview that you were able to provide for us today. Again, I saw you on Channel 8 right before the holidays, and you were sitting down with the co-hosts, and you were outlining a series of scams. I think it was the topic of that morning segment, and you indicated at that moment in time that you knew who was gonna get preyed upon. It was gonna be the elderly. It was gonna be non-English speaking folks. It was gonna be people who are otherwise not connected to your traditional media outlets, and you had a hard time reaching them. So I know that comes down to like what you guys are talking about. Like, how do you get out there? How do you ensure that those folks are protected? But over the last couple of weeks, I think every one of us on this committee, everyone I talked to has gotten scams from toll, people pretending that they need to collect a toll. People have gotten scams about, one email chain or another. Like every single person in this room is subject to and likely a potential victim of the new, more sophisticated scam that some clever person decided to spend their life developing, right? And so it's your agency ultimately that is like on the front end looking at those things, probably seeing them before we see them and already crafting responses to them. So I think anytime you can get out, you know, I don't know that I've watched local television in a decade, but I heard from at least 20 people who saw you that morning talking about it and then sent the clip to show me what you were saying about it, right? So like,
Good.
I think getting out there and your role in trying to wait, did Caitlin organize that for you? Is that what you- yeah, no, so this is a backhand compliment to Caitlin. Great job on that one. I think getting out there as many ways as you possibly can and celebrating the successes and the work of all of these incredible individuals in the divisions that they are responsible for maintaining only benefits the citizens of the state. And I appreciate your focus on that. And I appreciate the consistent focus on that from every person that's here. It was great.
Thank you.
So I have a number of questions. Senator Austin.
Thank you.
Yeah, Senator Austin.
So I have on different total, not on the same vein. So a couple of issues have come in revolving around hemp. And I would believe that's your manner. And I apologize, you may have said some of this, but I was trying to deal with our special session coming up next week. So I apologize. And so federal law says that hemp is no longer on the listing, yet we seem to continue to look at hemp differently than the federal law. Is there a reason why we're doing that? Or do you believe that depending on the THC level that hemp may or may not have in it, that leads to some connection?
Well, hemp is very complicated, and
I'm well aware.
and the cannabis space is very complicated. And you add them together, and it's really it's a lot to unwind. Our role around hemp is not necessarily the hemp itself. That's part of the Department of Agriculture.
Right.
We kind of interact with hemp when it stops becoming just the plant, really, and starts to get concentrated or certain chemicals are isolated from it. And so the challenge with hemp kind of comes down to a couple of different things. But when you start to think about it, it's really based on this idea that it has 0.3% THC by weight, and that in and of itself is complicated. When you regulate things by percentage, it's always a bit of a challenge. And so, if you just take 1 pound of hemp, that means it roughly has 1.4 grams of THC in it, and that's a lot of THC, right? The average. So if you were to buy a gummy from our regulated cannabis market, those are just 5 milligrams. So it's like 200 or so, 270 gummies that 1 pound of hemp could make. And so that whole structure is ultra complicated, and then after that, people are kind of manipulating the chemicals they're extracting from the hemp plant and turning them into other cannabinoids, which are part of a synthetic class, which I don't think was the intention of the Farm Bill. And there's a lot less data about how safe those are. And so it's very, very complicated. We can happy to talk about it so we don't bore everybody with the science, but
You won't
happy to
bore
answer.
me on the science
Okay.
because I'm really interested in this.
Sure.
And so I'd be happy to set up some time after this because as Senator Maroney will tell you, I spend more time talking to him about hemp than he really wants me to talk about. He'd rather talk about AI. And I would,
Maybe we can combine the
I
two
have-
for you both
Huh?
and really have a nice time. I think
I'm
that
not certain we would have a nice time on that,
I
but
don't know.
to each his own.
I agree. So we do have a meeting coming up on a couple of issues, and I'm happy to meet with you more on it. And share any information that I've acquired over my years of regulating these.
Well, I have a number of hemp farmers that have reached out to me on their loss of business broadly and their loss of business specifically, in particular, because the hemp bill originally was my bill to start bringing hemp to a place where we could use it. And so many of them are losing their businesses, just directly reflective of us having recreational marijuana and has made some differences in their business. So I want to understand what we can do to make sure that this fledgling business is not being just outlawed broadly without any real consideration for what they perceive as a direct attack on them. And I'm not certain that that's anybody's intention at all. But I think that we have to make sure that we're not making it so difficult for them to participate in any business entity. And sticking to my point on appropriations, where I only let people ask.
I was just about to reference that. I think you're in danger of violating your own rule.
Oh, no, I try to stay to 2, seeing as I can always come back for another one if we're going to be here that long. And then gaming is another issue that is of great interest to me. I don't know which one of you does gaming. And, gaming is really important to Eastern Connecticut with 2 federally recognized tribal nations. And I know that we've talked a lot about how their licensing is supported by the tribal nations. And I didn't know, how many staff do you have currently that are paid for by the 2 tribal nations respectively?
By the 2 tribal nations respectively, I'd have to look that up to get you the exact number, but not all the staff assigned to those properties are paid for completely by the tribes. Several of them are general fund funded.
So that would be helpful to understand because, again, those are 2 very large businesses in Eastern Connecticut that employ north of 12,000 people. Not something that we would ever want to see negatively impacted relative to business. And I know some people get concerned about problem gambling. I personally don't give them any of my money in gambling. So, I understand some people enjoy it and it's not my cup of tea. But I do support both businesses relative to their impact on employment in a region. So I'd be interested if you could get me that data and then the data associated with the lottery and the costs associated with them and what they are paying for. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Ackert online.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully you can hear me fine. To the commissioner, thank you. Thank you for taking the time with your staff. It's been, I didn't come in person today because I said I thought I knew a lot about DCP. Well, I'm completely wrong. I learned a substantial amount today, so thank you. So I do have a couple of questions. I think it might be more than 2. First one being, since we converted over to the requiring the home improvement contractors to register online and renew online, have we had a loss of licensures or registrations? It's not a license. Have we had a loss of registrations by the home improvement contractors?
I don't have the answer to that, but I can get you those numbers and follow up, Representative.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. That would be fine. That would be fine. And then, and I'm sorry, Pam, Ms. Brown, I did not hear the number. I heard part of it, but the licensed inspectors that you have on staff in that department, what was the count on that again?
I did not give the count, but there are 6 licensed inspectors in our occupational enforcement unit.
Oh, I did hear you say 4 that were.
4 that are licensed they're licensed as building code officials.
Okay, I did hear that number. So there is just 6. I submitted legislation a number of years. I wish that it would be taken up. And I'm not trying to run your department at all, Commissioner or Ms. Brown, on this, but it just seems like we could use more of those, more inspectors. So, and just because I teach the continuing education class is one of the ones that has been mandated for electricians. And I'll ask the class of 50 electricians, when was the last time you've seen a license inspector on a project? And how many times have been asked for a license? And they've said, people that have been in 30, 40 years said never. And myself, in 40 years, I've been asked once to show my license on a job site. So I'm just trying to keep the bad actors out of our trades. So, but I thank you for that information, Pam. And then I have a question on the weights and standards, weights and measures. Since we do that for gas vehicles in terms of our gas, and it goes to that use and portion goes to the special transportation fund, I believe. Is there a way to do weights and standards on electrical charging stations?
Yes. We're putting in for equipment now it's on. Yes, there is. We're putting in for equipment now that will determine the accuracy of the labeling. They have to have certain labeling on the charging stations in terms of like what type of energy they're getting. And then, but yeah, that's something we're gearing up to take care of at this point in time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green. I appreciate that. I just was curious as how they would manage that, so I appreciate that. And then on the liquor piece that Caitlin mentioned, the 920 new permits, were they new permits or were they some that were sold to, like maybe a liquor store transferred those over? Would that be considered a new permit?
That would be considered a new permit if it was issued to a new backer business entity.
Okay, so I didn't know if it was like 920 brand new in the businesses. So these can be transfers. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then I have an interesting question on the 3-day cancellation right. I happen to buy a vehicle, and I said, well, I have 3 days on this contract, right? And they said, no, because you came to our establishment and wanted a vehicle. There is no 3-day cancellation. I go, oh, I didn't know that. I thought any contract. But as I look at the home improvement and new construction contract form that you have online, the 3-day cancellation for a home improvement contractor or that type of work, an individual, by the way I read it, can sign a contract that morning. I'll give you an example. I had a plumber come over to my facility, my home, and said, here's the price. And I signed that right there in front of him. And it was a non-emergency job, just a regular contract job. And by the statute or by regulations here, it says I'm not obligated to pay for that work because I have a 3-day cancellation policy. Even though it says, this is what I'm reading online on your website. Is that accurate?
So this is Pamela Brown. I can take that question. It used to be called the cooling off period. So that protects homeowners from high fear tactics and high pressure sales tactics. So that is the point of having that 3-day cancellation cooling off period.
Right, but thank you. I thank you for that question. But if somebody signed like I did, and they said, yeah, we can start now. I said, great. I needed the work done. But it also is interesting that someone could say, well, hey, I decided not to go with the work that you just did. And that's where I'm at a little bit of a loss on that piece. And I completely understand high pressure sales coming. Hey, I can do these 4 windows from you in front of your house. I got a contract right here and you can sign it. And then the windows get installed. And then someone can back out on that within that 3-day period. That's correct then.
Yes, and so unless there's a bona fide emergency, someone can actually waive that 3-day cancellation, but it is there for the purpose of providing a cooling off period. So most of the times people sign a contract, everything is good, and then they walk away. Maybe they felt like they've been scammed or they got into something more than they intended to. So that's the purpose of the 3-day cancellation rights.
Okay, so that just follow-up question, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me these questions. And I get that piece of it, but if somebody was scamming the contractor, so I guess have you had reports of a contractor reporting saying, hey, I did this work, and then 2 days later, the person I just did the work for in that 3-day period said they're not paying me? Have you had complaints on that side, the contractor side?
We have, but they're not very frequent.
Okay. Thank you again. Thank you, Commissioner, and all in this very informative session. And thank you, Mr. Chair and the good ranking members, the chairs and ranking members. I appreciate you putting this together.
Thank you, Representative Eckert.
Thank-
We,
Mr.
sorry, Commissioner.
Can I just respond briefly to
Of course.
Representative Eckert?
No,
Just
kidding.
Okay.
have no authority.
Well, thank you. In terms of your comment on the inspectors, we do have 6 inspectors now. That's the most we've had in quite some time, and I really do want to thank the administration and the legislature for their support of that. I do want to echo what Pam did outline in her presentation, that knowing that we could always do more, we have paired up with the Department of Labor to leverage their employees, and they have a larger staff, so we can send out fewer people and kind of divide and conquer with their staff. So we are getting out there. We've all actually been on inspections with them, and I've heard what you've heard, and they said, where have you been? We like that you're here and you're asking us for your license, and we're getting out there, we're hearing that, and I don't think you'll be hearing that from your colleagues as often as you have, that they've never been asked for their license. The EV charging, Frank is on that. We've identified about 2,000 of them. They're getting registered. We're getting the equipment. We're submitting for the equipment to actually test them to make sure that they are charging as they're advertising. And our general counsel will follow up with you on that 3-day cancellation issue that you flagged. It's a little more complicated, and we'll explain it to you and follow up with the committee as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that follow-up. Very much appreciate that.
So I have Representative Turco, and then we'll have closing comments and get you guys back to work.
Thank you,
Turco.
Mr. Chairman. For my 2 quick questions. Commissioner, I think this may be directed towards Director Brown, but you can let me know. A couple of years ago, we passed out of this committee and in the legislature a bill with regarding automatic renewal contracts to help consumers, get out of those contracts, cancel those contracts, not be automatically renewed without their permission. And I was just wondering, and there's been some proposed bills. There's a proposal from the Attorney General to strengthen that law, which I'm glad to see. But I'm wondering from your department, what kind of complaints you've heard, what type of areas you see issues still with. Thank you.
Does that relate to fuel? Does that relate to fuel?
With any sort of automatic renewal, the contract that somebody may enter in.
Like a gym membership.
Right. Gym memberships, magazines, newspapers,
Pam-
online type of stuff.
So gym memberships, alarm systems, things of that nature.
Yes. Yeah. Are there any
I think that we see
complaints?
that's improved. I don't see as many. Many years ago, we were looking at complaints coming in daily from alarm companies just automatically renewing. I know that we've put things in place through statute where they have to give notice prior to renewing the contract. So I do see the benefit of that addition.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I had, I didn't realize this issue with the charity bins. It's the first I've heard of for-profit companies, and we have them all over in my district. Personally, putting stuff in there all the time. How can a consumer, and it's great you're doing investigations on this, but how can a consumer go up to that bin and maybe know this is a legit nonprofit, my donation's going to go to a reputable source? Is there any type of sticker, licensing number, anything on these charity bins to inform the consumer?
All of the above. So they should also provide DCP, Department of Consumer Protection, on their labeling so that they can call to inquire as to the status of that bin, whether it is for profit, if we have them listed as a nonprofit agency. Also, they should declare right on the front of the bin where people are depositing their goods that this is a nonprofit or for-profit organization.
Thank you. Maybe a suggestion for the outreach team and in a future newsletter, maybe to include, a picture of what that looks like for the consumers to know what to look like in the bin, and also maybe some additional information so people understand the automatic renewal law that we did pass, that if they find they're trapped in a month-to-month contract, that there's a law protecting them to get out of it and what that is, because I'm not sure a lot of consumers know about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. We did send out a press release this morning about the charity bin investigation. So please feel free to share that. I did an interview with a local TV station just before this. So you should be seeing a lot of information about that. And we'll be sharing pictures on our social media as well.
So thank you. I want to thank every member for all the questions. I want to thank the commissioner for the wonderful time and energy and effort that you've put into this and organizing folks for today. I know our ranking members have a few questions, and Senator Maroney wants to say a few things before we leave. Senator Ciccarella.
Thank you. And I'll be brief, more of a comment. I want to thank you for taking the time to do this. Very informative. As the good chair said, you know, you're getting the word out. You're on TV. I think I even heard you on the radio. Got a really good nickname. Forgot what it was, but I'll figure out what it is. We'll see.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But no, it's
I have
really
no recollection of that, Senator.
Yeah, okay. I'll remember it. But just want to just really thank you for this and all of the great work that you're doing. I know you're really focused on streamlining processes, making things more efficient, making sure we're helping people that could possibly be victimized by bad actors, but also paying attention to the businesses and being pro-business. And I've noticed that and have heard it, and just wanted to, again, recognize you and your team. And I know the governor also made that a point to say we want to be friendly to business. So that's my brief comment. And if I think of that name, I'll pop back on.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Maroney.
Thank you very much. Again, it's just been a great honor working with DCP over these last several years as a co-chair of the General Law Committee. You do the important work. You protect our constituents and make sure that the things that impact their lives, right, and step in the times when they've been negatively impacted. So we appreciate that. It's, you know, one of the great honors of being an elected official is getting to work with and meet with so many state employees. And the more you work with them and talk to them, you realize how fortunate we are to have so many dedicated, passionate, intelligent employees who are out there working on behalf of the residents of Connecticut every day. So thank you for all that you do, and thanks for the time you spend educating us on the many issues. And another great thing about your agency, for someone who has ADD, there's always something different, right? We get to jump into so many different issues. So thank you.
So thank you very much. We really do appreciate the time you spent with us today. We know we've got a few of you back before us on Monday to go over in a more specific designed hour and a half, 2 hours, where we go into the gaming compacts and the gaming regulatory structure that we have here in Connecticut. And we look forward to hearing from some of your members on Monday as well. So with that, to fellow members, we will see you back here on Monday, where we have the informational forum with our two tribal partners, Connecticut Lottery, Department of Consumer Protection, and representatives from Problem Gaming. Until then, we stand adjourned, and thank you all so much for your afternoon.